Hey mamas, it's Krista Noel, founder of the Intuitive Divorce, and I'm popping on here right after class with my beautiful team member, Master Coach Joe Young. And boy, we just got out of a pretty heavy class. And as we say, if you've been following any of these videos up until now, we never really know what's going to get unpacked from week to week because a lot of life happens in the in-betweens. And today it was one of our teaching classes, and what we were diving into was what is the loudest voice in your divorce? And we started with this because, as we say over and over again, awareness is the breakthrough. Awareness fosters the breakthrough and creates momentum in your thinking, in your spirit, in your energy, in your being, and definitely in your divorce. What do I mean by that? Well, when I ask the question, what is the loudest voice, whether that's in your head or in your divorce, what we're really digging for is there a pattern at play? Is there a default setting? Is there a place that when this happens, I start thinking this way, or I take its hand and it leads me someplace I actually don't want to be? And sometimes that voice in your own head can be maybe just an imprint of somebody else's voice. Was there someone that silenced you, made you feel less important, or that what you had to say was less important? Or is it a feeling that if I speak up, if I say what needs to be said, what comes up? And so it was a really powerful conversation that could go in a million ways. But the reason that we dive into constructs like this is because it's the one area that when everything else feels like it's out of control, like in divorce, this is what you control. This is your real estate. This is your domain. So when you start to become aware of where my thoughts are taking me, what my default settings are, what are the patterns that are playing out, then guess what? You can do something about it. You can be aware of it. You can turn your inner critic into a co-creator. You can start to recognize, okay, is this voice fear or is this faith? Is this feeding me or is it draining me? Is it criticizing me or is it lifting me up and celebrating me? So it's really powerful. But I'm going to say, in doing that today, we had some triggering conversations. And hey, bring it on. Because you know what? You need to feel the feels while you're going through this. And I know that a mom who's going through divorce and is in the messiness of the process, she's trying to put on a happy face for her kids. She's trying to put on a happy face at work. She's trying to put on a happy face in court. And she's got a lot of conflict going on inside, and she's got to have a place to let it out. And that is why being in this container where you can keep it raw and real and where mamas are showing up and open to workshop with us. And we will wrestle a feeling to the ground, not because we're going to bypass it, not because we're going to deny it, or not because we're going to try to push it away, but because we're going to try to look at it and say, okay, what now? What can I do with this? Is this working for me, or is this costing me?
Yeah, it was a big class. And, you know, I often say, working with clients, that our thoughts either serve or sabotage, which is exactly what you're saying. And so to be mindful of that, to be mindful of those thought loops that play out on repeat over and over and over again, because our thoughts do influence how we feel. So if we're feeling really overwhelmed or exhausted, which we got a lot today, or a victim, or I'm feeling abused by the system, whatever it is, pay attention to what you're thinking,
Mhm.
not to bypass, to your point, but to use it as intel. Oh, in the back of my mind, am I telling myself all day long how tired I am, how overwhelmed I am, how exhausted I am, how much I have to do, how I can't keep up? Those are the things that influence all of a sudden, yeah, I feel exhausted. Well, of course. right? It's exactly what I'm affirming for myself all day long. And so becoming aware of that voice, that loud voice that we're speaking either out loud or in our mind all day long matters tremendously when it comes to our life experience.
I love that you brought in the exhaustion, that piece, because that did come up specifically for one mother. She was telling us about something, and that was just an adjective that came right to the forefront for her because it is a lot, because divorce is a lot. But you know what? Also, there's something about exhaustion which is really interesting. If you get curious about it, it's like, I mean, obviously, a mother without a divorce on any given day can be exhausted. We understand that, but there's a different kind of exhaustion. And I think this is the mental exhaustion because once you start to lean into what you want, what you desire, what you're creating, what you're changing, what you're transmuting, what you're transforming, all of a sudden there's a little bit of tension inside because it's this old and the new. And it is this like kind of like imagine this tug of war within you. Guess what? That's exhausting. But I don't want you to be afraid of that. I just want you to be curious about it. And you know what? If you're exhausted, nurture it. Do what you need in that moment to get through this day. And by the way, each day all we can do is show up one foot in front of the other and do the best that we can. And what we're trying to do with a lot of the mothers who are very overwhelmed, have a million and one things on their plate, it feels like there's 1,000 fires that need to be put out. You're not a firefighter. You can't put all fires out at one time. So we prioritize. We try to say, okay, what is my top priority? What is my number one goal here? How can I support that? How can I show up for that? And and then I want you to ask yourself the tough question. Am I doing that? Or am I staying committed to an old narrative? And
Yeah, is your thoughts serving that goal?
mhm,
You know, are your thoughts, are your actions serving that goal, that one goal? Because they can't serve everything,
mhm,
to your
mhm,
point. We have to prioritize and stay laser focused on what is the one thing I want to accomplish in this moment, on this day, to move my divorce forward or to do whatever the priority is, right? One
mhm,
mom today was saying, you know, the working out the stuff with the kids was her main priority. And it's like, then you have to let all the other noise go for now. You have to put it aside and really laser focus on every time something comes up, am I asking myself, does that serve that goal? Is that moving me towards working this out with my kids? Or
mhm.
is it not? Because it's one or the other, always. So, you know,
Yeah.
it is the awareness piece, which is what you said in the beginning, that we have to be aware before we can make a shift. When you're tired, when you're overwhelmed, what doesn't help is to remind yourself of how tired and overwhelmed you are. To constantly be telling yourself all day long how tired and overwhelmed you are. What's
Mhm,
the first thing somebody asks you? How you doing? I'm exhausted. I'm tired. You know, pay attention to that. What are you affirming? Yes, I have a lot going on. That's a better answer. I have a lot going on and I'm going to prioritize some rest because
mhm,
that's what's being called for right now. That's a whole different thing than defining your self, labeling yourself in any label, right? Whether it's tired, exhausted, frustrated, anxious, whatever it is.
And I really hope that that piece comes as a bit of relief because
Mm.
the best way to deal with overwhelm is to just pull back and to just take a look at what's going on here. Oh, yeah, I'm trying to put out 972,000 fires at once. And last time I checked, I realized I was not a firefighter. So what do I do? And I'm not trying to make light of it because I do know that in divorce, every aspect of your negotiations and your settlement and your life and your interactions and your triggers and your big decisions, I know they can all feel like they're the most pressing thing in the whole world. But prioritizing and figuring out, okay, this is the number one goal because once I take care of this, then it's going to impact these other aspects. And so, just to put it in layman's terms, I was working with a mother this week and she's having a lot of difficulty with her kids. And there's a lot of pushback and there's a lot of parental alienation. And while we're giving her strategies to just keep hanging in there and planting seeds and nurturing them and building this foundation beneath them, we had to come to the conclusion and the reality that it's not going to all get fixed and change in this moment, maybe not this week, maybe not this month. That doesn't mean that all of the things that she's doing are not contributing to her goal, her overarching goal. So we peeled it back a little bit and I said, okay, but you know what? Getting this divorce across the finish line is what's going to help your kids the most. Because the minute it's over the finish line, then I know what my finances are. I know where I'm living. I know what my custody agreement is. Now I can build around that. Now I can start settling. Now we can start decompressing. So sometimes, probably all the times, prioritizing is really going to help you because you can't be all things to all people at all times. It's just not possible.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And part of the reason this group is so fabulous is because we do provide the freedom to show up wherever you are, and that's what happened today. We had a lot of moms that were in pretty extreme situations in this moment. And to be able to break it down, to be able to remind them of these things, there were tears and there was laughter and there was all kinds of things, but to be able to remind that this is a process and a journey, and you get to take control where you can take control. And that means being in charge of that voice, paying attention to whatever the loudest voice is, whatever's calling to be prioritized, and making sure that you're staying on track. And
Mhm.
so it was a tougher class today and a beautiful class all at the same time. And to your point, we never know what's going to come up week to week. And it felt very, I think, aligned today for the women that were there, that they all need a little bit of extra TLC in this moment. So it was
And
beautiful
a
too.
and a mother going through divorce needs to be able to do that. And that's why we're always beating the drum that the condition that you are in this process, where you can let it go. Because if you just try to hold it all in and deal with all that frustration and deal with all that pain and deal with all that grief, it's still there. And it's going to come out one way or the other, and it might come out sideways and in regrettable ways. So why not show up for yourself? Because the condition you are in while you are divorcing is going to impact everything. And it's why we love what we do so much, because we see the immediate shift, because so many mothers are really just running at such a deficit when it comes in this category of self-care, self-love, self-advocacy, self-nurturing. And so I honor the women that are showing up to do this, and they are moving the needle in their lives and in their divorces. And it definitely puts them on a better path to a better divorce. And the women that are leaning into that are divorcing smarter, they're healing faster, they're protecting their kids. You know what? They're reclaiming their lives and they're healing and they're finding their freedom. And nothing is more beautiful to see. And guess what? We're going to have to wrestle some feelings along the way. But if you're here, you're ready to do that. And you're ready to release that. And you're ready to take charge of the narrative that's playing in your mind. And you know what? Those stories change because you start to create the evidence that there's a new mama in town. But
That's
bum,
right.
right?
That's right. It was a great class and more to be continued, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
and thank you. I love Joe's expertise that she brings to our classes and our coaching and the nervous system. And just there's just so many ways. And I'm always reminded this, I love this so much, but I'm always reminded while I'm in this container and listening to these lessons and going through these classes that these are life skills. These aren't just divorce skills. And when you start to embody this, you then impart this upon your own children. And that is just
Mm.
so gorgeous. That's how important this work is, because it really is legacy work. And we do use that word. So we hope that perhaps we've sparked something within you to just consider, what's the narrative that's running in the background? And is that mine? Or is it something somebody else told me about myself? Because many of us have been labeled in our lives. But you know what? We don't have to label ourselves. We don't have to adopt and keep for life in perpetuity somebody else's narrative. So we want to leave you with that because that's an empowering thought. And thank you for sharing this time with us. And if you want to learn more about our work, please head over to intuitivedivorce.com and make sure you're on our newsletter list. And we've got an app and our social media, and we've got programs, and we've got so many ways to support you. But first and foremost, I love this group container. I love seeing mamas come together in shared experience, reflect their celebrations and their struggles, and just inspire and hold each other. It's pretty sacred. So,
Yeah, it really is.
so
I'm
thank you
glad
for
I get to
today.
share it with you too.
I know. Oh my gosh, I know. I know. And, in the ups, downs, and all arounds, we're right there with them. And it matters. It matters to us greatly. So we're happy to be here with you today.
Yes. Till next week.
Till next week.